All right, guys. So I've got some breaking news here. A report out in Politico that basically is explaining a beef that is going on within the Joe Biden campaign recently, which is really interesting because, as you guys know, Joe Biden was the candidate that everybody coalesced around. But there seems to be beef between Bloomberg people and then everybody else, that being Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, all those people who are now unemployed jumping on the Biden campaign or just giving their advice from far away. And there's a lot of beef and friction going on. And that's why the Joe Biden campaign has sort of been in a standstill lately. They're in a position to really go after Trump. The primary is basically over. But, they're not really doing anything. Joe Biden, for all I know, is dead. I don't really see him. I think he went on a Corden show or something. But, for the most part, he doesn't really show up anywhere. Now, this piece is titled Internal Biden Campaign Rift Opens Over How to Compete with Trump Online. So senior leaders are split over whether to hire Hawkfish, a digital firm financed by Michael Bloomberg. And so hopefully you saw those reports where it was like Hawkfish was basically trying to buy up the campaign infrastructure of the Joe Biden campaign. It was Bloomberg funded. That was a report that had came out a while ago, like less than a month ago, basically. And so there's a big rift going on. It says the disagreement among Biden's top advisors centers on whether to hire most of its digital team internally or to rely on the firm Hawkfish, which is backed financially by billionaire Mike Bloomberg and ran the digital operation for his presidential campaign. And so right now what's going on is right now you can't do any knocking on doors. You can't do any of rallies. You can't do any of that stuff. And so all of it is online right now. It's all virtual because of Rona, right? So that's why this is such a crucial piece of campaign's infrastructure. Now, it says the internal argument over Hawkfish, detailed by 10 Democratic officials, including several who have spoken with the campaign, has stalled Biden's hiring just as his new campaign manager, Jen O'Malley Dillon, settles into her role. Since Rona's shutdown began last month, the campaign has not added any digital staffers. It says, one outside Democratic operative who has been in touch with Biden's team said that the fight inside the campaign has taken on a generational dimension, with older officials more receptive to Hawkfish's pitches than younger digitally native staffers. Quote, the idea that Hawkfish is a silver bullet for anybody is pretty ridiculous on its face, said the operative. The reason it may feel that way to some non-digital people on the Biden campaign is that it seems easy, it's a one-stop shop. Advocates for Hawkfish argue that instead of spending weeks or potentially months building an in-house team, the campaign could plug and play the firm now. They say it is flush with Bloomberg's cash and boasts an impressive roster of Silicon Valley talent. In short, Hawkfish's defenders say it offers the best chance to beat Trump. And so one of the Democratic strategists says he was ready for Silicon Valley arrogance, but found them to be smart and in it for the right reasons, so you can't hate them that much. Advocates of the in-house approach argue that it would make the campaign more nimble, save money, and generate more authentic content. They add that they believe Biden campaign senior leadership is being lured by grandiose promises and warn that the campaign would be turning over its most critical tool to a firm with little political experience but that's backed by a man who is not a Democrat for most of his life. Or as one Democratic digital strategist outside the campaign referring to Bloomberg's performance in the primary put it, quote, they just spent $1 billion to win Guam. Now, as you guys know, Bloomberg, the only place he actually won was American Samoa, not Guam, but the point still stands. Quote, it would be a colossal mistake, said Shelby Cole, the digital director for Kamala Harris's presidential run, who also led Beto O'Rourke's digital fundraising efforts for his 2018 Senate run. On the Bloomberg campaign, it's my impression that their team had a blank check to spend on digital, but that doesn't mean they have experience running an innovative digital program that inspires supporters and mobilizes voters, which is true. It's a true statement. And so this is a former digital director for Kamala Harris 2020, the presidential campaign. And so pretty much what's going on here is there's a big rift going on. And basically what's going on is all these people, because the Biden campaign sort of is run by these people who are old, people who are Democratic operatives. These campaigns like Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, they'll have like a lot of young people on there. There'll be young people who are, for whatever reason, attracted to Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris or whatever. And so they'll have more young people on it. Joe Biden really doesn't have any young people outreach or any sort of young people representation inside of his campaign at all. It says, but the holding pattern on personnel has baffled freshly unemployed staffers from the campaigns of Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Harris, who feel that valuable time is slipping away. Several said they reached out in recent weeks to offer with little response. That frustration spilled out into the open Monday in response to a story from Bloomberg News about Biden's digital standstill. Quote, this is the earliest a primary has been settled in recent history. The Biden campaign should be taking advantage and staffing up yesterday, Roderica Applewhite, a senior rapid response researcher for Buttigieg's campaign, wrote on Twitter Monday. Quote, especially digital, as it's been the game in town for nearly 2 months now. It says, beyond the debate over using an outside firm or building the digital team inside the campaign, Hawkfish in particular has provoked outrage from some of the most prominent digital strategists in Democratic politics. Quote, every cycle there's a new Silicon Valley savior that's going to come in and save the day. And every single cycle it doesn't pan out. Caitlin Mitchell, the chief mobilization director for the Warren campaign, wrote on Twitter after The Intercept reported that the Biden team was considering Hawkfish. Somehow Dems never seem to learn the lesson. I sure hope we don't let 2020 be another chapter in the perennial tale of us getting suckered. So again, this is coming from Elizabeth Warren's chief mobilization director, the Warren campaign. And so everybody coalesces around Joe Biden. And so now there's some divides that exist between the strategies of the Biden campaign and the rest of them. Because while policy-wise, Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden are pretty much the same, although Elizabeth Warren, even though they're different, Elizabeth Warren and Biden are definitely different. They're not as different as Bernie and Biden are, but they're definitely different to some degree still. But, these people from like Kamala Harris and stuff like that, they have a lot of young people on their campaign. There's definitely some young people who are sort of represented in their campaign staff. Like, how much of Joe Biden's campaign staff do you think are people who are like under the age of like 25 or even 30, let's say? It's not going to be much because he's an old guy. He caters to older voters. His whole thing is geared towards older voters. Okay, that's all it is. And he's really out of touch and really old. Oh, well, actually, he's in touch, if you know what I mean. But, he's out of touch, okay, with, young people. And so that's where this beef is coming in. So we're starting to see there's disagreements inside. And so, again, like I told you guys, and as everybody knows, right now the game when it comes to campaigning, digital, 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 virtual, virtual, virtual. It all has to be online. You can't go out and knock on doors right now. You can't go out and volunteer. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. You can't do rallies. None of that is possible right now. And so the fact that they've been sitting on this and they haven't really been hiring anybody, and then also the fact that Joe Biden isn't every single day coming out and doing a Rona response to Donald Trump when it's like the biggest possibility to seize on, should make every single American in the country concerned about his cognitive decline. Now, that's not going to happen, unfortunately, even though it should. But the fact that he's not coming out is pretty scary. The fact that he's not coming out and actually giving his response, a daily address to Donald Trump and a daily address on the Rona. Okay, so it's pretty scary stuff going on here. It says some progressive digital operatives point to groundwork the tech vendor Clinton's 2016 campaign used that was championed by Google's Eric Schmidt as an example of this dynamic in past elections. Some digital operatives also warned that Bloomberg's connection to the firm could undermine Biden's recent attempts to get the left wing of the party to enthusiastically back him. Rep. AOC tweeted that the Biden campaign ought to reject Hawkfish. Quote, this is a bad idea, a really bad one, she wrote earlier this month. One former Obama campaign official agreed. There's no good reason to trust that they could even do the job, while there are numberless reasons to expect that they'd screw it up. And it would step on their overtures to the left, which would be a terrible mistake. So this is some really interesting stuff going on, and honestly, and here's an important piece of information. It says Hawkfish has only existed since 2019. During Bloomberg's presidential run, the campaign said the firm was its primary digital agency and technology services provider, provided digital ad services, content creation, ad placement, and analytics. That tremendous capacity has also led to worries that the firm is after more than just the Biden campaign. So, this could be something really big. Like, this could be a serious and this is what it says. It's been said that Hawkfish is trying to pitch themselves as the cheapest option so they have a shot at taking over the party data infrastructure. If that happens, I won't know who we are as a party anymore. So here's what this means. Okay, basically Mike Bloomberg is trying to buy up the Democratic Party in whole. All right, he's trying to buy it up because if his backed, this company that is backed by him and where all the money comes from, Hawkfish basically takes over. He's essentially got a grip on literally everyone in the Democratic Party. So this is a lot more dangerous than you think. Now, when it comes to, is this sort of going to help him or not, I don't see any chance of Joe Biden being able to pull out any progressives or young people. Or at least not that, you would get by default, right? There's always going to be the default amount of young people and progressives you're going to get. I don't think he's going to be able to pull any progressives that aren't planning on voting for him by having this digitally native, in-house digital team. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. It's just not possible. And so, in the short term, I think that what we've seen right now, this is interesting, what I'm going to say is pretty interesting. The numbers we're seeing right now in polls right now, because of the Rona that's going on right now, who is most affected by Rona? It's old people, right? Because they're the ones highest at risk for it. Donald Trump's response has not been good. Now, what we've been seeing in polls is they're actually leaning towards Biden in some pretty high numbers right now. And depending on how the recovery process works for Rona, which could take a long time, I'm sort of trying to figure out in my head how long it's going to take. It's hard to guess. By July or August, are we going to be booming back up? If we're not, if the economy doesn't start taking off, everything doesn't start opening up again, you're talking about it's going to take a while. There's a ticking clock going on, until we got, 6.5 months or something like that. 7, 8 months, whatever we got left until November, when the election day is. There's a clock ticking for Trump so that there's basically this time ticking for how long it is before he can actually, get his reelection chances back. If the economy doesn't open back up, I think that Trump is pretty much done for. Because what's been shown in these poll numbers is old people are Biden's having damn near double-digit leads in the senior vote, 65%. They're the biggest voting bloc. They are the ones who vote the most. So it's a crucial group of people to have as your supporters. Now, what's interesting about that is short term, you probably want to go with Hawkfish in that situation, even though other people are going to disagree with the Elizabeth Warren people. But the thing is, his strength is not with young people. He's not going to pull them. If Biden wants to win, his only real chance is to just go all out for the old vote, okay? Because I think this Roni has really provided him the opportunity to do so. Now, this is a terrible situation. I mean, I don't want him to pick any digital staffers because I hate the guy. I don't want him to be the nominee, all of that stuff. And so I'd rather have him go with the native staffers rather than Hawkfish. I think Hawkfish serves as a sort of long-term sort of demon for the Democratic Party and progressives in general, which is a very dangerous thing. And I think that is something that's very unfortunate. So it's pretty scary what Hawkfish can represent. But if you're looking short term, if I'm in the mind of Joe Biden and the Joe Biden campaign, it's probably your best move to go with Hawkfish because you have to make your biggest pitch to old voters. You're not going to get young voters. It's just not going to happen. No matter what authentic content, if that even exists for Joe Biden, you put out, you're not going to sway progressives to vote for him. Your only shot is the Roni people. All right? So I'm telling you what they should do from the mind of Joe Biden and the Joe Biden campaign and their top staff. Now, for me, I hope Hawkfish fails. I hate Hawkfish, right? It's a Michael Bloomberg entity. Essentially, it's just this sort of power grab in the Democratic Party. It's pretty scary, actually. But, I just don't like Joe Biden. So that's really the only chance to win is to reach out to old voters. So pretty scary stuff going on here, but there's some beef broiling within the Joe Biden campaign, a pretty big rift that is forming right now.